Now let's suppose we have a text box and we enter something in that text box. It's going to be stored as a string. That's just how Visual Basic works. Anything that you enter in a text box, no matter what it is, it's going to get stored as a string. So what if we want the actual value of the number? Or maybe we're entering like some number and we want the actual number and stored it into like an integer or a double. We don't want it to store it as a string. Well, there is a method we can use to take the string and convert it into some number. This is called the Val method with the V capitalized. So let me give you just a couple of very simple examples. So we have, if we do 34 in here in quotes, because remember it takes a string, this is going to return 34, the number. If we were to pass 23.65 as a string, it's going to return 23.65 as a number. So notice that with this Val method, it doesn't matter whether we try to get integers or doubles, it'll work either way. We can even do negative numbers. So if I do negative 3.4 in quotes, it's going to return negative 3.4. This is in fact very similar to the parse int and parse double and parse float methods in Java, where we pass some string and it's going to return the equivalent value as an actual number. So here is an interesting question. Let's say we pass a string that does not have any numerical values. What happens? Do we get an error? Fortunately, the answer to that question is no. We're not going to get an error. What happens is if we pass a string that does not have any numerical values, the val method is going to return 0. Now, granted, if we pass 0 as a string, it will give us 0 as well, but the point is, if we pass a string with no values, we're automatically given 0. So let me give you a couple of examples. So let's say we were to pass some string like H, 3 H's. There are no numerical characters in here at all, no digits, nothing. This will return 0. Okay, what about this example where we pass 5, but we pass the word 5 instead of the number 5? Well, we may have passed 5, but it's not the number, so since Visual Basic doesn't recognize it as a numerical value, it still returns 0. In this case, if you wanted to return 5, you should assign the numerical value 5 and not the word 5. Now, what's also interesting about the Val method is if the beginning of the string is a numerical value, even if the rest of it is complete garbage, the Val method will return that portion of the string as a value. So what that means is as long as the beginning part is a valid number, it doesn't matter what comes afterwards, the Val method will return that initial number. And this is actually useful in several situations, especially when we're trying to parse different types of strings. So let me give you a couple of examples where this works. So let's say I pass the string 2.3.4. This in its entirety is not a valid number. However, 2.3 is a valid number. So the Val method will recognize that 2.3 is a number, and it'll stop at a dot because at that point it says that that's not part of the number, and it returns 2.3. Let's take a look at another example. Let's try something like negative 4.5.9 in quotes. That is a string. Well, once again, the method's going to recognize that negative 4.5 is a number. Everything afterwards is not part of the number. So the Val method will return negative 4.5. Now let's try one more example. Let's say I do something like 3.67 and then a bunch of garbage letters, a couple of G's and H and a few S's. What the Val method will do here is see that we have 3.67, that's a number, and then when it sees the G, it says, okay, that can't be part of the number, so we're just going to return 3.67. So this is an example of where I was mentioning before, where maybe we have like this big code of string code something, where we're trying to get numbers within the string. We can use the Val method if the number is at the beginning portion of our string. Let's do a couple of examples of using the Val method in our code here. So what we're going to do is we'll do the same examples we did before, well, similar example, where we would have message box display some result. And we're going to use the Val method to actually see what's going to happen here. So we'll go into the code view, and we're just going to add a couple of show methods. So message box.show. And let's do this a couple of times. Let's see here. We'll do several examples. We'll do 5. All right, so we'll do the vowel method. So we just do val. And then let's put in here, for this example, negative 23.45. So we'll do that as our first example. So that should display negative 23.45. And we'll do another vowel method. If I can type, that would be good. So let's do 3.457 and then ABC. So here it should just display 3.457. The ABC part would not be displayed in this case. Let's do val again, and this time let's put in 1,000. That should give us an interesting result. And then val, and let's do 2.3.6.7. So here it should display 2.3. Here for the 1,000 example, I don't think it's going to, I think it's going to display a 0 in this case because there isn't an actual number in here. Let's do one more. So let's do ABC 3.457. Let's see what that does. Pretty sure I know what that will do. But let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So click on start. So we see that we get negative 23.45 for the first one, which makes sense because the whole string here is an actual number. So we get 3.457 for the second one, which, as I said, makes sense because the way the vowel method works is it's going to keep reading characters in the string until it's no longer recognized as a number. So 3.457 is a number, and then it sees the A and it goes, that part's not a number, so we take out the A. The 1,000 displays a 0, just as I thought, because there is nothing in here that indicates an actual numerical value, even though technically we do say 1,000, it's not the number 1,000. And then we get 2.3, which, as I said before, what would happen is we'll read the 2.3, and then when it sees the second point, it recognizes that that second point is not part of the number, so we just stop there and print the 2.3. And finally, we print 0, because initially, even though we have a number here, what happened is it sees the A and goes, that's not a number, so we're just going to print 0. Let's do one more example where we'll just kind of bring everything together. So what we're going to do is we'll create a couple text boxes where the user will be able to enter some numbers, and then we're going to have a button that will add the values of those two numbers, and we'll display it in a message box. And then we'll clear the text boxes so the user can do it again. So that means we need to add a couple tools. So let's add some text boxes. So let's find text boxes. Should be down here. I'll click twice so we have 2 text boxes. So I'm going to put one here. And I'm going to put one here. Let's try to work on the spacing. Okay, that's fine. All right, we're going to call this text box. Let's see, let's find a name. So it should be down here. We're going to call this tbnum1. And then we're going to call this one tbnum2. Okay. So now we need to add a button. So let's find our button. There we go. And I'm going to put this right about here. And we're going to call this bt add. And let's change the text for the button as well. So we'll call it add. All right, so there's our form so far. And then we'll double click on the button so we can create the method that will handle the event of clicking on the button. So let's do that. All right, so there's our button click. And what we're going to do is we'll create a message box and have it display something. So we'll do message box.show. And then in here, we need to take the values of our text boxes. So what we're going to do is we'll put everything into the in here. Yeah, this is what we'll do. So we first need to display the values that were entered. So we're going to use the vowel method. So we can use tbnum1.text. And then we're going to concatenate a plus sign, and then concatenate the value of the other text box, num2.text, and then we're going to concatenate the equals sign. So this is basically saying num1 plus num2 equals whatever the sum is. So to get that, well, we need to get the values again. So we'll do val tb num1.text. So this will give us the value of the first text box again, and we'll add that with the value of the second one, num2.text. And that should be everything. Okay, that at least displays the text box, or the values that were entered in the text boxes. Now we need to clear the text boxes. So the way we do that is we put in the name of the text box, so tb num1 dot, and then we have the clear method. So that will clear the contents of that box. So we'll do the same thing for our second text box, dot clear. All right, that should be everything. So let's go and run this and see what happens. Okay, so let's do something simple. 1, 1. We click on add. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Okay, that looks good so far. Let's do a couple more examples. Let's do 5. And then maybe 123. 28. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think we're on to something. That works. Yeah, I mean, we can just play around here and add whatever numbers we want. So this basically allows us to enter 2 numbers. So maybe we'll just put in some gibberish numbers, and then we add them together by clicking on the add button. And sure enough, it does give us the sum of those 2 numbers.